I'm Mark Dawson from the Self-Publishing Show, and this is Self-Publishing Spotlight, where we shine a light on the indie authors who are changing the world of publishing, one book at a time.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Spotlight. We meet indie authors at all stages of their careers and ask them a series of 5 questions. 5 questions about their process, their mistakes and their successes. 5 answers that will help you level up your own author career. My name's Tom Ashford and I'm part of the Self-Publishing Formula. Don't forget that you can get your self-publishing resource kit at selfpublishingformula.com/starter kit. This week's guest is Jeff Barnes. He's written 2 books in the business/self-help genre and he lives in California. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.
So do you want to start by maybe talking about your books, because it's quite an interesting sort of genre that you've got?
Sure. So I teach the world's only accredited college course on the history of Disneyland. And I've used that as a vehicle for writing 2 best-selling books. The first one is The Wisdom of Walt, Leadership Lessons from the Happiest Place on Earth. And then the second book, which is the follow-up, Beyond the Wisdom of Walt, Life Lessons from the Most Magical Place on Earth. And so the first book focuses on Walt Disney and Disneyland, and the second book focuses on Florida and Walt Disney World.
Very cool. So first question is, why do you write? So was there a reason that you wanted to get into writing in the first place, and I guess particularly the topic that you chose to write about?
Yeah, so I've always been very interested in story and the power that story has to engage us. In fact, Walt Disney himself most wanted to be remembered as a storyteller. That's why he built Disneyland, not as an amusement park, but as a place to tell stories. And I was really fascinated in his story, quite frankly. But I think most importantly, this idea that each and every one of us has the opportunity to live our own great story. And so for me, the opportunity to write a story, to tell a story, to engage a reader in any sort of story that might motivate them, might inspire them to change their story and to then go out and start living their own better story. For me, that's what gets me up in the morning, and that is what makes me want to put, words onto paper.
Cool. And so are you indie published or traditionally published?
I am self-published, more sort of a hybrid. My books have the Aviva Publishing label, which is out of Lake Placid, New York. But it's one of those deals where you pay them an upfront fee, and then you get to the use of their label, and they get you the ISBN number, and then you retain 100% of the rights and 100% of the royalties, which I think is just a really great way to go in 2019.
Right. And what introduced you to self-publishing in the first place?
I actually hooked up with a writing coach individual here in the United States by the name of Patrick Snow, and he recommended going that route, and it was really a great option for me because, again, it allowed me to maintain control. One of the things I love about writing is I get to be my own boss. And, if somebody contacts me and, I want to, do a deal where I sell the books for less because I make a lot of money from speaking, and I'll use the books as an opportunity to get on the stage. I'm the boss of the book. I can do whatever I want, and I don't have to worry about a publisher or, anyone else that I have to ask permission for. And so there's a lot of power in self-publishing today. And again, it allows you to be the boss of the book. And in my opinion, opens up a lot more doors and a lot more opportunities.
Very true. Okay, well, question number 2 is, how do you write? So do you tend to plot your, it's non-fiction, but do you tend to plot your chapters out beforehand, or do you just write and see where it sort of takes you?
Well, I'm actually working on the 3rd book in the series, The Worldwide Wisdom of Walt, which will focus on the international parks and the cruise ships. And generally what I do is I will put the chapters down first. And then once I know what the chapters are going to be, I then will fill in what I think the potential stories are going to be. And then from there, I'll set a word count goal. And so for the first book, my word count goal, which started in November of 2014, my word count goal was no less than 333 words a day. Now, there were a lot of days I wrote more than 333 words, but there was never a day when I wrote less. And it didn't matter. Like, I didn't write from beginning to middle to end. I just looked at the chapters. I just looked at the stories that I had slotted in before I ever started writing. And wherever I felt like I had 33 words that day, that's where I wrote. And over time, 333 words becomes 666, becomes 999. And before you know it, you've got half a book, and things start to come into focus. And eventually it almost sort of becomes paint by number. And at that point, you just simply have to go in and fill in the gaps. And I say simply, this is not an easy process by any stretch of the imagination. It's not nearly as difficult a process as I originally thought that it was either. And part of my story, I actually, the first year that I taught my History of Disneyland class, which was sort of the launching pad for the two books, the first year that I taught that course, in the middle of that class, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And it was the brain tumor that led me to being committed to writing the first book, which I had had in my head and had dreamed of writing for more than 2 decades. And it was sort of that sense of mortality of, are you going to do this or not? And so, what had been something that I had, dreamed about and procrastinated on for more than 2 decades, once I set that writing goal of 333 words, I actually managed to finish in 142 days. So again, it's not nearly as difficult as you might think. You just got to get over yourself, lay out your chapters, lay out your stories, set a writing goal, stick to that writing goal, and great things will happen when you give yourself into the process.
Yeah. And is there a particular time and place that you prefer writing?
I like to write in the morning. I'm very much a morning person. And I have a room in my house that is sort of my space, if you will. It's my gaming room. It's my television and movie watching room, and it's also my writing room. And so that's my room, and that's my space. And like I said, good things happen there, and I'm very comfortable in that space. And I think it's I'm not typically a very disciplined person, and one of the things that I like about writing is it's the one area where I know that there's some discipline. I'm going to get up in the morning. I'm going to go to this space. I'm going to commit myself to this process, and I'm not going to stop until I have this particular word count. And then when I'm done, I'm going to go on with the rest of my day. And then lo and behold, I'm going to show back up 24 hours later.
Yeah. Okay, question number 3. It's a little bit different because obviously you do sort of speaking engagements as well. But question number 3 is: are you a full-time author? If you are, how did you get there? And if you aren't, what steps are you taking to make it happen?
Well, I'm not a full-time author yet. I am moving toward becoming a full-time speaker, however. And for me, I'm selling about 500 books a month, which I think is pretty good for the space that I'm in, especially given that I'm not full time. But at the same time, we are working on a blog that comes out twice a month, and we are working on a third book. But all of this fuels another part of the business, which is speaking. And again, for me, it's part of the discipline, and it's also part of fueling that creativity, which I just ultimately enjoy. But there's another aspect to it as well, and that is building an audience and finding out that you have a voice, you have a way of connecting with people, and at the end of the day, you have something to say that people like to hear, and that your voice matters, and people want more of it. And you're never going to know that until you actually get started and put pen to paper and get your thoughts and get your words out there.
Yeah. Okay, question number 4 is, what mistakes do you think you've made and what have you got right?
Oh, well, we've made a lot of mistakes along the way, and that's okay. You're not going to know until you try. I think one of the mistakes that I have made is I did at one point allow my book to go to a more traditional publisher, thinking that they would do more for the book than what I was doing, and that simply was not true. And they did nothing other than take half of the royalties for that 2-year period. Now, to my credit, the smart thing that I did in that process was limit that contract to a 2-year period. And I specifically said to the publisher, I'm willing to do this, but it is going to be an experiment. I want to know for sure that you're going to do more for me than what I'm already doing for myself. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to want the book back. It didn't work. And I regret that I ever even assumed for a single second that a publisher would do more for me than I could do for myself. So that was a mistake. But again, I have to give myself credit. I was smart enough to limit it for 2 years, and I did get the full rights to the book back. So again, if you think you need someone else to make this happen, you don't. You can self-publish. You can do it on your own. The world is your oyster in the 21st century. And I think the second mistake that I am continuously making is this sort of belief that there's a silver bullet, or there's just some sort of like magic turn that's going to make all of this easier. It's been an incredible ride since the first book came out a little more than 4 years ago. We've had a great time with it. It's been a wonderful adventure. But the second you think if you do A, then B is going to happen, it never quite works out that way. And so you're constantly going to be grinding. You're constantly going to be hustling. You're constantly going to have to work to get the next sale, or to write the next blog post, or to get the next chapter written. And you're going to have to love that, because there is no silver bullet. You have to love the work, because the work is where the magic is.
Yeah, very, very true. Now, you've given out quite a few good pieces of advice just like that during this episode. But question number 5 is, what's your final piece of advice for authors starting out in indie publishing?
Commit to writing every single day. I made myself unbelievably and unnecessarily miserable for more than 2 decades because I didn't think I could do it. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't think anybody would care if I did do it, and none of that was true. And for me, I really want as many people as possible to avoid that anguish that I went through, or at a minimum, don't wait until you have some sort of life-threatening illness to get serious about your writing goals and your writing dreams. Whatever you have kicking around in your head, you can do it, and you can start now. There's absolutely no reason why you have to wait. Is there a lot of stuff you have to figure out? Absolutely. But you're never going to figure it out all ahead of time. In fact, you're not going to start figuring out until you get started. So you might as well get started now.
Very, very true. Cool. Well, that's it. That's your 5 questions. Thank you very much for coming on.
All right. And hey, best wishes to everybody.
And to you.
Because it's a great ride. And I really want everybody's book to get out there, because, we need what's in your head. We need it in a book.
That's it for this week's Self-Publishing Spotlight. Don't forget that you can get your free self-publishing resource kit at selfpublishingformula.com/starter kit. And if you want to appear as a guest on this show, send us brief details about yourself and your writing at selfpublishingformula.com/spotlight-guest. I'm Tom Ashford, and I'll see you again next week.